You're listening to the Patriot Nation podcast.
All right, welcome into another edition of the Patriot Nation podcast. As always, a proud member of the CLNS group of podcasts. Make sure you download and subscribe to all those great shows to get great Patriots content all week long. But tonight, it's your boy Pat Lane here with my guy Matt St. Jean. And Matt, the league year has officially started, and with it came a whole bunch of chaos around the league, which we'll talk about. But the Patriots, since we've been off on Monday, the Patriots have made some big signings, and I feel like the people that were upset in the chat on Monday, maybe not quite as upset anymore.
Yeah, starting 2 minutes after we ended our recording Monday night,
literally
when the Elijah Vera Tucker signing came in, and we said in that our last episode Monday night, we expected more signings to come. We didn't think they were done on Monday, and they obviously were not. A couple big signings, a couple small signings made since then. I still don't think they're close to done. I still think they have a lot of work to do, but feeling overall pretty good about where they are, heading into the deeper part of the offseason, heading into the draft. And, as of yesterday at noon, Wednesday at noon, it's a new year. So happy New Year, Pat.
Thank you. And the same to you, sir. Same to you. We'll talk about the Max Crosby debacle in a minute, and the Ravens just being just absolute schmucks and skirting the rules once again, the Ravens. But I want to start. Let's start with the AVT deal, because that happened just after we got off. I think it's a risk. It's definitely a risk because he's just been hurt nonstop. However, he's so good and so talented that it's worth the risk, because if he's good, if he's healthy, he's arguably a top 10 guard in the NFL, and he's 26 years old. So I love them taking this chance. They also have the highest per game incentive in the history of the NFL. So they protected themselves, but he's betting on himself, and I like that, and then we'll see what happens. But I think that this is a good plan for them. I still think they have to address guard in the draft on day 3, maybe even on day 2, depending on who's there. But I love this pickup by the Patriots.
Yeah, I think the AVT signing is a really good fit, echoing all the things you said about his ability. He's a very good run blocker, and we said this is something they're going to need at left guard. Will Campbell is hopefully going to add some NFL strength in the offseason. Jared Wilson hopefully moving to center and then adding some NFL strength is going to help. But that left side of the line couldn't push people last year. It just didn't have that capability. Elijah Vera Tucker, he can push people, he can move people. And having guys who can do that at both guard spots, I think, is massive for what your offense is going to be able to do. So I feel happy there. There's a part of me that wonders if the fact that he gets injured often almost ends up being a blessing in disguise, because I don't view him as a long-term answer. I view him as someone who is a useful, short-term piece here. 3-year deal. I'm assuming it's one they can get out of after the first, if not the second year. And if you're going to be drafting guards that you would like to develop, in that the average number of games that Elijah Vera Tucker has played per season is 8.6. So that's half a season right now. Right. So you're telling me that if you draft a rookie, he's probably going to get to play half the season his first year. That's roughly what you're looking at here. That's pretty good for easing someone in for development purposes, or to make sure that someone you draft is going to have an opportunity. I like that. I still think you can go guard in the first if you want, especially with Michael Onwenu's contract situation. Last year of his deal, they can free up a lot of space if they cut him. You don't want to cut him. He's your best offensive lineman right now.
Of course, yeah.
But, you're looking to the future here. And the one other thing with Vera Tucker, he has positional flexibility. He has played all 4 spots except for center on the line in the NFL. And I think in theory, if he loses a starting guard job because a rookie beats him out, he can just kind of become a backup at any spot. He can be a swing tackle for you. He can be a backup at both guard spots, which in theory then allows Ben Brown and Jared Wilson to just solely focus on center. And whoever wins that job, you're going to feel good, hopefully, coming out of that. So, just some view there. And the fact that you have him for a couple of years, too, is nice. It does give you the flexibility that if in the draft this year the board doesn't fall the way you want, and there's just never a guard there that you like, all right, well, that's okay. We fixed it for now. We'll go get it next year.
Yeah. I agree with you. And that's, I think that's, I don't know if I'd think about moving on from Onwenu because I think he's very good, but it is a situation where he is going to be very highly paid. You're going to pay Christian Gonzalez. You're going to pay Drake May. You may not be able to pay everyone. And if the guy that you decide not to pay is your right guard and you sign a guy in free agency that's significantly cheaper and you draft a guy who ends up being really good, then I can see it. Then I can certainly see it, right? Do I want that to happen? No. But I can understand at least where they're coming from.
I will say, like the Onwenu stuff, that's like a 1%. That is in the world where Vera Tucker comes out is perfectly healthy. Remember, he hasn't played since 2024, not in a regular season game. Comes out, it's perfectly healthy, looks amazing. You think you can trust him, and you happen to draft a guard who is immediately a starting caliber guard. And in that case, you're not cutting Onwenu, you're trading him because he's a very good player,
right? And
someone would want him. But just the fact that you got you have a lot of guys on the line who you think can play one or two different spots, or they do something well, and I don't know. You can see a puzzle starting to come together where the pieces can maybe fit in a couple different ways depending on how the draft goes. And it's like the opposite of a couple years ago. A couple years ago, they're shuffling things around because you don't like any of the players. This year, if things get shuffled around, it might be because they like the players.
True. Yeah, it's a good point. And I do think too that I'm trying to look at the draft day trade that the hold on. So I'm just thinking. So Darnell here says that you can't draft a guard in the first round, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. But the Patriots. So this is quite up as in 2013. The Patriots had the 29th overall pick. They traded that to Minnesota. In return, they got 52, 83, 102, and 229. Okay. That's a spot where I feel like now 52 is kind of far to go back, but if the Patriots feel like there's a lot of depth there and they don't love any guys on the board in that spot, if you're drafting a guard at 52 and you have 2 third-round picks, 2 fourth-round picks, then 3 fourth-round picks at that point, right? Then I feel like I'm a little bit more comfortable with them doing that in that situation. And that's one of those situations that I can see happening. When we look at it and say, like, I don't. And by the way, that trade, you drafted Jamie Collins in the second round, Logan Ryan in the third round, and traded the 7th round pick for LeGarrette Blount. So that one worked out pretty well
on all fronts. I will say, like, I'm not. Positional value matters in the draft.
Yeah.
When you're picking at 31, that's 100% a spot where a guard can go positional value wise. Like, the top guards in the NFL are making $23, $24 million a year. It's not in the upper echelon of positions, but it's valuable. And I think you see some of the guard contracts getting handed out these days. It is increasingly valuable in the 100%. NFL just because there aren't enough good offensive linemen. So if you can play any position on the line and you're good at it, I mean, we saw how much money Tyler Linderbaum just got resetting the center market by like $10 million.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah.
Like that's the value of these guys right now. And if you are sitting there at 31 and you think the best player on the board is a guard who is a plug and play starter, we're not talking Cole Strange projected late day 2, early day 3 type of prospect. Especially the guy I'm thinking of is Pregnon out of Oregon.
Yeah,
someone who's big, beefy, scheme fit, pushes people around, kind of unlock your running game, And I think, big picture, the key equation in the NFL that every team is trying to solve right now is when you play a defense like Seattle's that's going to put all their light defenders on the field at the same time and still defend the run. How do you push them out of the way enough that they have to put linebackers out there that you can attack in the passing game? And that makes guards incredibly valuable, which I think is something the Patriots are trying to lean into here.
Yeah, I agree.
We saw the Reggie Gilliam signing, and we're going to talk about the Julian Hill signing at tight end. But adding some beef and some blocking ability there, I think, is more important today than it was 5 years ago.
Well, 100%. And by the way, to be clear here, like, you might draft an offensive tackle that you think isn't ready to start this year, but can learn for a year under Morgan Moses and be your starting right tackle next year. You're not drafting a guard in that situation. Certainly not at 31. No. You might draft a guy in the fourth round in that situation. But at 31, you're drafting, like you say, Pregnon, someone like that. That's a plug and play. He's starting on day one, and that's why we're drafting him at 31.
And someone you think is going to end up being a Pro Bowl caliber guard.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. So we'll see. So they sign him. Now they signed Romeo Dobs as well. So I guess we'll just kind of go through. We don't need to spend a ton of time talking about everyone, but these two, I think we have to spend more time talking about. Romeo Dobs, I think, was a solid pickup for the Patriots. I think he can get close to what Stephon Diggs gave you last year. I don't know if he's better than that. I think your wide receiver room's a little bit worse right now than it was last year. And that's okay because you're significantly younger than you were last year, at least at the top of the depth chart, right? Diggs goes out, Dobbs comes in. He's a lot younger. You feel like, maybe he can ascend a little bit more. He had his best season last year. He's played extremely well in the playoffs. So, like, those are some things where you look at it and say, okay, we feel like we can get better here. So I don't, I don't necessarily, I don't mind it, right? That we're a little bit worse right now. That's okay. And I like it. I think Dobbs is a really good player. And that's fine. And people can talk about his guardian cap and everything else and blah. I don't care. Like, who cares? He plays the guardian cap on.
The Dark Helmet Man. Who's the guy from Spaceballs?
Yeah, Dark Helmet. Yeah, but who else plays? Who else plays the one is Peppers. Who cares?
Oh yeah.
What difference does it make? Like,
it's going to look funny, and I like it.
Yeah.
Also, the thing with Dobbs, he was someone who I think was a very attractive receiver candidate across the league, just because he kind of does everything well. He just is kind of a B plus at everything. He's not like a real burner, deep threat, but he can stretch the field. He can play outside the numbers, but you can move him inside, and he's really good there too. He's twitchy, but he's not the twitchiest. He's got hands to make spectacular catches, but he will drop a couple of balls. Like, he's just a good player. He's not a great one, but he's good, and they need that. And I think you look at, we don't know specific contract details yet, which I think is weird. The rumors, numbers have been all over the place. I think we landed on 4 years, $80 million. And it's like, all right,
max 80 million. I think they said 468 with an max of 80. With a max,
we'll work with that 480 for now. The next 2 years, Stephon Diggs was going to be 26.5 million, and then 26.5 million against the cap. You're getting Doubs for significantly less than that, and I'd say there's a pretty decent chance Doubs is a more productive player next year than Stephon Diggs is. As you look at aging, and especially 2027, I think Doubs is going to be a better player. And the fact that Doubs is just so versatile, he does everything well. He's young. It's like, all right, this is someone who you can bring onto the team, and no matter what you do schematically, no matter what other players you bring into the occasion, he's going to have a role. We think he's going to be here in his athletic prime, and he's going to build a connection with May, and he's just like a really, really, really good number 2 receiver for your team. And they need that. I'm going to be curious to see how they use he and Booty. I see with the signing of Reggie Gilliam, I expect we're going to see a lot of 2 running back formations with Gilliam and either Henderson or Ramondre Stevenson. So that means probably a lot of just 2 receivers on the field. So it might just be Dobbs, Booty, Henry, Gilliam, and one of the running backs. And that's going to be your look, 30%, 40% of the time, at least when you're not in situations where you have to throw the ball.
Yeah.
I like that formation grouping. I don't think it's the most dynamic. I think one thing where Patriots fans are still in Mac Jones mode here. You go back to 2022. You think Mac Jones is something, but you know he's not the thing that's going to put you over the top. So there is so much focus on making sure your offensive line is that, your receivers are that, your tight ends are that, your backs are that. With Drake May, you can fudge it a little bit. He is so dynamic himself, and I think the offensive line is just going to end up being better here if they stay healthy, that he doesn't need the most dynamic receivers to get the most out of them. Not saying you shouldn't invest in the position. I think you should still draft a receiver here, but you don't have to have the best receiver in the NFL to have a top 5 passing offense when Drake May's your quarterback.
Yeah. And if you can get more out of, if you can get more out of Kyle Williams, if you can get more out of, Pop Douglas, I still think they need to upgrade that position, but whatever, you can get more out of Pop Douglas, you can get, what you got out of Mac Hollins again, like those things. I'm okay with that. Now listen, the other thing that I like about the Dobbs move is that, and everyone kind of said it right away, this doesn't stop them from making another move. If they want to trade for A.J. Brown, they can do it. If they want to trade for Brian Thomas Jr., they can do it. If they want to, whatever they want to do, they can still do it because they have the flexibility with him. And I think that, that to me makes it even better, right? You got younger at the position. You got a dynamic receiver that I think does a lot of things well. And, now you still have that flexibility where if you want AJ Brown, which I think they do want AJ Brown, and I think it's going to get done after the draft, after June 1st. But if you want AJ Brown, you can go out and do it still. And now it slots everyone down. And now you have AJ Brown as your number 1, Dobbs is your number 2, and Booty is your number 3. And you feel really good about that, right? And so that's one of those things for me where I look at it and just say, yeah, that makes it even better because if you had signed Alec Pierce, and I love Alec Pierce, if you had signed Alec Pierce, you wouldn't be able to do that, right? Alec Pierce would be your number 1 and Booty would be your number 2, basically, right? Yeah. In this situation, Dobbs drops to your number 2 and AJ Brown goes to your number 1. Now you have to give up assets to do that, but it is what it is. What are you going to do, right? So, that's one of those situations. But I do think it makes sense for them if they want to do the AJ Brown trade, which again, I feel like they do, and I feel like they're going to get it done. I feel like, Philadelphia wants to move him. The Patriots want him. It seems like everyone in the league thinks the Patriots are going to get him. It just feels like that's happening. We'll see, but in the report, was it Burt Breer or G. Hardy? I forget who it was that reported that it could be, a 2027 second and a 4th or something like that. I'm okay
a lot more palatable than the 2 firsts or whatever we were just hearing
100%, or even 1 first. I don't want to give up a first. So you tell me it's a 2nd and a 4th or something like that. I'm okay with that.
I feel a lot better about that. Oh, and the other thing too is that you're in a position where if you don't get AJ Brown right now, and these are your 2 veteran receivers, they're going to lead it with Booty and Dobbs. We can live with that. You can run a real NFL offense there and feel pretty good about it, and make and elevate those guys, and you can draft someone and fit them into that, whether it's your 1st round pick or a 2nd or, wherever you want to go with it. And with the AJ Brown stuff, they don't trade for him over the summer. You get to the trade deadline, you want to make that move.
Right.
You can make that move.
Well, and that's the other part of that. And No Skips kind of says it here too, that there's some freaky receivers and even tight ends in the draft, right? If they go into the draft, this allows them to go into the draft with no restrictions.
Yep.
And if Denzel Boston drops to you at 31 or drops to 29 and you want to move up to get him, you can do that. And then you say, all right, we don't need to trade for AJ Brown because we feel like we have a future number 1 wide receiver on the team right now, right? And so AJ Brown not being available to June 1st actually helps you because it opens up the draft board for you, right? Because if you're trading for AJ Brown now wide receivers off the board, right? Is Denzel Boston going to be there? Probably not, but he could be. And if he is, then you might jump on that and say, yeah, forget AJ Brown. We're going to start with this kid who's 22 years old instead of AJ Brown who's 29 or whatever. So,
and And I will say, you look at their free agency as a whole, and I think it did one of the things that I think is so important. There really aren't a lot of holes on the roster. There are spots where I think you want to be better, but basically every hole is plugged right now. And there's a couple that I think you could argue aren't starting a second starting edge. Probably you want someone else there.
Mm-hmm.
I would say a nose tackle. I like Corey Durden. I don't really like him as a nose. I like him more a little bit more outside. I'd rather bring in someone beefier if that's an option here.
I agree.
But like for the most part, every spot's filled, and you can go into the draft and just take, guys who neutrally you think are the best player on the board without having to worry about, how they fit into your roster. And I think that's I would side note on this. People do say I think best player available gets misused because best is just an inherently subjective thing. It can mean whatever you want it to mean, but like now you have a lot of flexibility in the draft and can attack things however you want to attack them. If there's no receiver in this draft that you like, well, all right. Like if it just never falls your way, you don't have to take one. Like I just said with guard. If there's a receiver in the first you like, and then someone else falls to you in the fourth, and you want to double dip, you can absolutely still do that with this roster construction too.
Right.
And that kind of flexibility, I think, is really important just to give yourself the most chances to invest in your long-term future.
Agreed. All right. Other thing that we have here, and Bruce pointed out, we have a fullback. Reggie Gilliam. We hadn't talked about him yet, right? Because he signed afterwards, or did he already sign?
I think we talked about him. He was
the second one. You're right.
Jones, the pass rusher.
So Julian Hill, I guess, is the guy that. So people seem to like Julian Hill, and we'll talk about Byard as well. But people seem to like Julian Hill, and I guess he's fine. He had like a 37.8 run blocking grade last year. Yeah. Which, that's subjective, and who knows what the grading system is and everything else. But like 37.8 ain't good, and maybe he's being asked to do some things, but like, I don't love it. So I'm going to trust Mike Vrabel and Cowden and Wolf because they've hit on these types of guys, right? Where it's a low money guy that people didn't believe in, came in and played well, right? I'm going to trust them that they know what they're doing, but I don't love it, and I don't know if they actually filled a tight end need. You need a tight end too. I don't feel good about Julian Hill walking in as your tight end too this year.
Yeah, this is one of the weird. Like PFF does not love Julian Hill. People who I trust that watch a lot of football do like Julian Hill. I tend to trust them over just blind PFF numbers, and I trust Vrabel's evaluations. I do think, I look at the Gilliam signing. I know he has played some snaps a little bit further out wide, like lined up as an off-the-ball tight end. So I do wonder if we'd ever see Gilliam almost used in a blocking tight end role at points. But Hill, I think, is at least functional at it. They gave him a decent chunk of money. So clearly they believe that he is functional at this. And I'm gonna trust their evaluation here. I got to dig into the tape myself. I haven't had an opportunity to do that on him yet. I will say the other Dolphins tight end, Dulcich, is the one who graded out well according to PFF. So he was one I was actually more interested in just looking at numbers.
Yeah.
But if this is the one they prefer, I'm going to trust their judgment here, especially because that Dolphins run blocking scheme kind of puts players in weird spots, just grading wise. And if Hill can move people, that's really all I'm looking for here.
Yeah, I agree. And Bruce kind of says the same thing, that it's a lot of times they just asked him to do really difficult things, and sometimes he was good at it and sometimes not so much. And so, can he be a better blocking tight end? If they see the vision, I'm going to trust them. Doesn't mean they're going to be right, but I'm going to trust them. The last guy is Byard, Kevin Byard.
Yeah.
They did sign another safety. They haven't announced anything about him. He was there today. Mike Brown?
I believe it's his name.
I think so. But that's one of those things that, like, I love Byard. I think that he's a huge upgrade for them this year. He is older, so that worries me a little bit just as far as like future is concerned. But I love the pickup of him. I think they need to probably draft a safety as well.
Yeah.
But this is a great pickup by the Patriots.
Yeah, you're immediately better. I thought Hawkins played probably the best football we have ever seen from him in his career this past season, and even then, it was still rocky at times. And
Yeah.
he made plays for the team last year. It's just that it was ups and downs, and some of the bad plays were bad. It was inconsistent coverage, not necessarily the best run defender for that scheme, and Byard's just more experienced with this stuff. He knows the scheme. He knows Vrabel. So I'm really excited about this one. I will say, minor annoyance from a fan perspective. For some reason, it took me literally all season to not think Jonathan Jones when I saw the 31 out there and to think Craig Woodson.
Right.
And now Byard is taking that number and Craig Woodson switching to 4. So every time I see 31 for the first 3 weeks of the season, I'm going to go, Jonathan Jones, no. Craig Woodson, no. Give him Byard. And that's going to be really annoying. He's a playmaker. He has 4 seasons with 5 or more interceptions in his career.
Led the NFL last year.
Yeah, and that stuff's inconsistent. But I thought we saw Craig Woodson had a nose for the ball too. And just 2 guys who can do that and can make plays at that position and getting a veteran who knows the scheme that well in to work with Woodson. I like this. I will say, we saw Nick Cross sign in Washington. I like Nick Cross. He's actually younger than Greg Woodson is. I may have preferred that just because I like Nick Cross, and I think pairing 2 guys together looking for the future might be better. Byard, who I love, and I think is going to make him an awesome defense this year. It's on a 1-year deal, and he's in his 30s, and I feel like this is a strange time to put a Band-Aid on that position. I almost feel the same way with the edge rusher they signed, who's also older than some of the other options that were out there. And I guess if I look at this as a skeptic for just a second, putting on those classes, one of the concerns we had with Vrabel, or we heard about him, was that he can be too loyal to his guys. And I think if these signings don't pan out this season, that's probably going to be one of the things you hear. Elijah Vera Tucker is someone they have a history with. Romeo Dobs, I think, was Elliott Wolf in Green Bay when Dobbs was drafted, or had he moved on at that point?
I think he'd moved on. I think he had already moved on, but
still, that's the same tree of drafting those guys.
Yeah,
I think Reggie Gilliam, I think, is just fresh. I don't think there's any tie there, or for Julian Hill. Mike Brown, though, played in Tennessee with Mike Vrabel as the coach, so and he's a special teamer. But I think if you were going to make any criticism here, it would just be over reliance on that.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like that's what they're doing, just kind of bringing those guys in. I almost feel like, when when you're bringing in veterans, it almost feels like, all right, let's bring in someone we're comfortable with. Let's bring in someone we know and we're comfortable with, right? As opposed to, let's bring in a guy that has a higher ceiling or, maybe is a better player, but we don't know him as well. I feel like it's almost like we can trust this guy, so we're going to bring him in, and I understand that, but I also think at a certain point, if you rely too much on that, you're passing up other guys that could be better because you don't know them,
Yeah. And I will say, you look at what I think some of the stuff Belichick did when he first got here, and it's the same. I think you see this with every coach. I mean, how many former Ravens did we just see sign in New York with John Harbaugh? But this is just a thing coaches do, and it makes sense when you're trying to establish a new culture somewhere. Like, you're going to bring in your guys. On that note, interesting that they did not tender Jack Gibbons and also have not re-signed him. It seems like I thought Jack Gibbons was a fine linebacker, 3 run defender, and he was one of Vrabel's guys last year. I was actually pretty surprised, at least so far, that they have not brought him back.
Yeah, me too. That's a weird one to me because, again, like you said, if you are that loyalty guy, right, and you like these guys, and it's like, oh yeah, Gibbons is definitely a Vrabel guy, and so I'm surprised Now, maybe they look at it and said, yeah, that tenor doesn't mean anything, and we think we can end up getting him for less. Okay, fine. Like if that's what their plan is, but I think that they're going to that they're gonna have to sign another linebacker, right? They go to divide. They're gonna have to either sign or draft one. And so we'll see. We'll see who that is.
Yeah, and I think that was expected anyway. And like we're quibbling about the linebacker 3 or 4 on the depth chart. That's generally a good place to be.
Yeah,
especially I think I think this is one of my questions for them, because there were rumors that they were looking at signing more safeties after Byard. We'll see if they bring in anyone else, but are they hoping to play more dime defense this year, where you're going to have three corners and 3 safeties out there at the same time? I think we saw Seattle's defense do that a ton, and you need some talented players to pull that off. But if that's something you would like to do, all right, well, you're going to have one linebacker on the field most of the time, maybe 2. In that world, your linebacker 4 is probably not going to be game day active unless they are, an excellent special teamer who makes it on that accord.
Yeah,
you just don't have. Well, and especially there's some. You look back some old rosters where it's like, there's 7 linebackers, 8 linebackers on the roster. If you're playing a 3-4,
then you need that.
Your edge rushers are also your linebackers, and they're categorized that way. That's how it's going to look. The Patriots are playing, they call even fronts, so it's going to be 4 down linemen.
Mm-hmm.
Your edges on that in the NFL, we just categorize them as edges now. Harold Landry in the past is someone who's labeled as a linebacker. Now we just call him an edge, like that, because functionally that's all that matters. Like Mike Vrabel today, we might just call an edge.
Yeah, that's
so
fair point.
It's a difference in categorization. So now it's like, all right, you really only need 2 linebackers that you feel good about, maybe 3.
Yeah, I'm with you. Nikhil mentioned Romeo Dobs getting Gronk's number. Matt Sokol wore Gronk's number. Like, it's not
Jack Westover wore it.
Right.
I
so
think
not in a regular season game, but still, it's like, come on.
We've done this on here, but I think we were both in the same spot. Gronk's number probably should have been retired. Now that it's been worn by other players, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's too late.
This is the first. Well, do you know the last time a receiver wore 87 in New England? Can you name that one? Guy who made the team.
So Givens wore 87. I'm trying to think of who was after Givens and before Gronk. Let's see. Dietrich Ward, I think was 83.
I think you can get your eyes on it.
What? Oh God. Yes, that's a great hint. Riche Caldwell. My goodness. That's a good one. Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. It is. That's fun. I like when receivers wear numbers in the 80s. That's what they wore when I was a kid. So it's like, I think it's just fun to have that out there. I don't know. I like Gronk's number should have been retired. I'm also okay with I like, you see this in college football and you see it in some NFL programs where you just kind of give the same numbers out almost as rewards for guys at positions. And if they held 87 out because they are waiting for another tight end to give it to, that I think I'd be cool with. We've seen 24 with corners, and I kind of would have liked it if they made Christian Gonzalez wear 24, or if they made some linebacker we draft to wear 54 or things like that. Like, keeping those numbers within a position and building a legacy of multiple guys in the same thing, I think is pretty cool, especially with so many cornerbacks wearing 24 here and winning Super Bowls with massive plays. And Teddy Bruschi and Dante Hightower, Ben Coates and Rob Gronkowski. Like, we've done this.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I think, there's a lot of guys on the team. You just can't retire all the numbers, right?
No.
They've already retired 12. They've retired 20. They've retired
56, 57.
Yeah, 56 and 57. They retired another one from
40.
Mike Haynes, right. So it's like, at a certain point, you just run into numbers. You just can't retire them anymore, because you got 90 guys coming into camp, fine, but 53 guys on the roster and then another 10 guys on the practice squad. So at a certain point, it's like you just can't keep retiring numbers every year. Now, obviously, the Patriots are in a situation where like these guys aren't just good players; they're like the best ever at their position. So I get it, right? I understand. Like Gronk is one, but they didn't do it. Now, maybe they were spiteful about Gronk. Maybe they didn't like the way it ended with Gronk. Maybe whatever, right? But it is what it is, and that's the way it goes. I believe there was someone wearing 87 the year Gronk left. So,
not that made like I'm looking at Pro Football References database. So if there was, they didn't make the roster.
Yeah, that's true. By the way, my dad texted me 89 is the other number. Bob
yes.
D.
Bob D. Yes, legendary defensive end.
Yep.
We'll say, don't censor me in the chat. Does comment that Ray Bork wore 7.
He did
for a long time.
That's true. And then of course took the shirt off and gave it to Esposito on Esposito night. Like what a moment that was.
Yeah, iconic moment.
Yeah.
So in theory, you can still do it.
It would be cool if Dobbs was a good player for the Patriots. Right? If Dobbs is a good player for the Patriots, and let's just say 5 years after Gronk retires, he gets into the Patriots Hall of Fame. So that's probably only 2 years from now, right?
Yeah.
But whatever, Dobbs is really good the next 2 years, and Gronk's getting into the Patriots Hall of Fame, and he pulls a Ray Bork and takes his jersey. Not that they're gonna do that again, but he pulls a Ray Bork and takes his thing off, and he's wearing number 7. Ironically, he'd go back to 7 because by that time Carlton Davis would probably be gone. Yeah. And he'd go back to 7, and then they retire 87 or something like that. So again, I don't think that's gonna happen, but you never know. So
what I do think is nice here. Side note, you look at the jerseys that Dobbs wore. It's always something that ended in 7. That seems to be his thing. And 7 and 17 are both taken. Thank God they haven't. The Bryce Baringer is still on the roster because signing a receiver and putting him in 17.
Nope, can't do it.
Yeah,
nope.
They need to retire 17. Is what they need to do.
They really do. They really do. Or at least from.
No sure where that.
Well, honestly, Baringer hasn't been that good. So maybe it's the number. Maybe if he were 99, he'd be better. I don't know.
Yeah, they should. Keon White stole his aura by taking 99 and not letting the punter take it.
And he stunk too, unfortunately.
Yeah, that was rough.
So, all right, okay. Do you want to take a break, and then we'll do
around the NFL and then your mock draft?
Yeah, sure. I don't know. Are we gonna do a live mock draft tonight?
Well, we said we were gonna go through the one you wrote.
I guess we'll go through mine too instead of the live one. That's fine.
Yeah, we can do that, and then we'll do a live one on mock draft next Monday.
Sounds good to me.
All
right. Shoot your shot on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. Prize Picks is now giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5. Prize Picks makes every dunk, every dime, and every board that much more exciting. So don't miss this chance, to get started on America's #1 sports app. It's simple to play. Literally, all you do, pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. Pick from all your favorite sports, anything from basketball, baseball, hockey, UFC, soccer, college basketball, tennis, golf, esports, and more than that. And don't forget, they have early payouts as well. If your play gets off to a hot start, you can now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. And the community feeds feature allows you to follow other members and fade or tail their picks. Can't beat it. So what are you going to do? You're going to download the app Prize Picks. You're going to put in the promo code CLNS. When you do that, you're going to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5. Prize Picks. It's good to be right.
Hey Pat, we've got a third member of the team back once again here.
She's back.
Willa, hi.
What's up, dude?
Yeah, my for some context, my fiance is away right now, so the cats are just constantly here, and this is Willow's time of night where she's out and about.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
Should we talk talk Max Crosby? Because this
Yeah.
is something.
I did I retweet it? I think it was so perfect that I'm just gonna read the tweet word for word because it was so perfect. That I think, yep, here it is. From Sandwich, double M, double H. I don't even know who that is, but nevertheless. Look, we have no reason to believe the Ravens acted in bad faith this week. Besides their past history of standing behind Justin Tucker until he became a bad kicker and waiting until the second the Ray Rice video was released to cut him. Besides those little things, that's it. Like, this is what the Ravens do. This is what the Ravens do. And right or wrong, I'm sorry, you waited that long to do the medicals on him? What are we doing? And you know, once you see that Trey Hendrickson is available and isn't getting what you thought he was going to get, just coincidentally, that trade falls apart and you sign Trey Hendrickson instead, man, it looks nasty. And if the Patriots had done that, imagine if the Patriots, I always think about it, imagine if the Patriots had done that. They would have lost their first round pick. Like, they would have lost a pick for that. They lost a pick for filming a documentary in the press box with Patriots gear on. Like, the dumbest thieves of all time. You're trying to steal our signals, dressed in your stuff in front of the entire media. Yes, because that was the plan. Like, it's insane. And so that's, you know, yeah, I mean, the Patriots would have lost the first round pick. And the Ravens skate on it, and it's like, it's no big deal. Don't worry about it, guys. And then the report comes out that they were trying to do both. Stop it. They were trying to sign both. I mean, it's insane that they would even say that. And that, to me, proves that they're guilty because no one in their right mind believed that they were pairing Trey Hendrickson with Max Crosby.
Well, here's the thing. Like, nothing violating NFL rules has happened here.
Right.
You can't process trades until 4:00 Wednesday.
Right.
So in theory, anyone can back out for any reason before that point, before that paperwork is processed. And physicals are inherently a subjective process. There is no rubric. And maybe the NFL says, going forward, we are going to have very specific things in a physical that you have to look for. Maybe that's some guidance that comes out of this, and you have to be less subjective about it.
Yeah.
But, the idea of failing a physical because you don't like the deal, I think is something that has happened in the NFL before, not with a trade at this magnitude, but and that's part of the evaluation. Like, one thing I will say here in Baltimore's defense, if they got to look at his knees and realized he's going to be healthy this year, but there's more damage long-term than we expected, and we are not comfortable giving up 2 first-round picks,
right,
in this, I think that we just don't think that's his value after getting a look. I think that's fair. I do think one of the tough things is that I think there are plausible reasons why Baltimore could be backing out of this. And I don't know. The whole thing stinks and is awful. It is entertaining. Max Crosby now presumably playing for the Raiders. I think that'll be a fun story. This year, whatever comes out of that, because I'm sure he's going to be incredibly motivated to prove that his knees are at full health. I will say, if we get to the middle of this season, if Max Crosby is just not good anymore, what's the discussion going to be? Here's the thing. I think the Ravens deserve a lot of criticism right now for operating in what seems like bad faith.
Yeah.
Especially the timing of it all.
Right.
If you get out there and Max Crosby's not very good, well, is it kind of a savvy move to get a look at his knees and go, oh, yeah, this is worse than we thought. We don't want to do this anymore.
Well, and this
haven't signed yet.
Well, and this is the thing, right? So there's 2 parts of it. Number one, he was already hurt, and everyone knew he was hurt, right? Everyone knew he was hurt. So when you make that deal, you know that you're getting a guy that's injured, right? Now, everyone assumed he'd be ready for the start of the season, but whatever. The other part of it is that I think they made the better move. Signing Trey Hendrickson for just money is a better move than trading 2 first-round picks for Max Crosby. It just is. It's a better move. And so I think they made the right decision. It's the process to get there that annoys me. That they're able to do that and that everyone's just like, whatever it is, what it is. And it's just, and I shouldn't say everyone, because everyone's rightfully so crapping on the Ravens for doing it. And it was shady and you shouldn't do it that way. It's an unwritten rule, right? That you just kind of don't do that,
Well, it's just, they can't necessarily be trusted now to go through on something until everything's finalized. What I will say now is that I think teams are going to do more due diligence when making deals with the Ravens.
Yeah.
I also don't think this is going to have really any long-term effects. Because you can say all you want now, this is awful for the Ravens and they shouldn't have done this. And you can say all you want until they have a player that you want or you have a player that they want. And it's like, well, we're just going to have to go for it. And I don't believe the Ravens would have the audacity to do that 2 times in a row. So whoever makes a big deal with them next is probably nice and safe.
You would think.
The timing is horrendous, though. Just the number of moves that are agreed to in that time, somewhat contingent on that going through,
right?
I think is brutal. And I think it's probably a lesson in GMing for the future in that if you're doing a trade deal, like, don't start planning for whatever your next moves are until you've gotten those physicals done. And you know that they're not going to be backing out of the deal at that point. They're not going to be changing their mind at that point.
Well, and that's the other part of it that I think is interesting. What if we made a rule that said, what if the rule was you can't agree? Because I believe they agreed to the trade before the legal tampering period.
Yeah, they agreed to terms. It's just that agreed to terms doesn't mean anything until it's processed by the league.
So that's what I mean. But what if we made a thing where it's like you agree to terms and then we process the trade like right away, just like it would be once the season starts. If you agree to terms, the trade gets processed.
Well, I mean, in season you can waive trades with a physical, I believe.
Correct, but not 3 days later.
But it's also in season. There's the tighter turnaround. There's more like that's where I think part of this is as a GM, you have to be saying, all right, if you want this, let's go get the physical done today, and we're just going to get everything figured out. Like we remember the story about the Randy Moss trade to New England about how they had to get him on a flight to New England before the draft so that he could get in for a physical, which was basically them just poking him and making sure he really existed.
Right.
And they're like, all right, we're signing off on it. And, I think there's never going to be a world where the physical is not going to be a part of this because it's always health is always
you got to have it 100%.
And it's like you can always, I don't know, I bet teams can or have waived physicals before for players where you're just not, or is it mandatory? Maybe it is mandatory.
It's got to be mandatory. I think it's got to be mandatory.
Yeah. Well, it is. Like I will say for the Ravens, like I think you have a real cause for concern here. Like you're not testing to see if the meniscus is healed. It's not. He just had the surgery. But you are able to get a look of how is his recovery progressing and how much wear and tear is on this guy. Is a guy who plays at a very physical position, is in his late 20s, never comes off the field. You get in there and it just looks really bad, and you don't have like maybe this has nothing to do with the meniscus. Maybe they think in a year something else is going in his legs or whatever. Like I don't know. I think that I think is where the timeliness matters, and I don't think. I mean, in theory, you could legislate it and say you have to get the physical done within X amount of time after agreeing to terms, but also agreeing to terms is somewhat nebulous of a thing. And like, I don't know, there's always going to be mitigating factors. Like we're trying to trade a player, but he's out of the country and we have to wait for him to get back before we can do a physical. And
it's a fair point. It's a fair point. Like it's hard.
I think this is one of those things that has to be governed by the trust between the teams and the way individual GMs operate with one another. And that's all there is to it.
This is the part of it that pisses me off because no Skip says it here. The Ravens don't fail Crosby if Hendrickson had already signed somewhere. That's the part of it that annoys me. And listen, we'll never know. We won't know, right? There's a possibility that maybe they would, but it felt a lot like, it's a risk. We're definitely taking a risk here. and they see Hendrickson available and they think they can get the same price tag on him that they're paying on Crosby, they're okay with the money, but now they don't have to give up the picks. And they just say, you know what? Flunk him and we'll take Hendrickson instead. If Hendrickson's not available, feels like they probably keep Crosby and they just move on.
I'm going to say I don't agree 100%. Only because when this trade went through, we know what everyone thought is, wow, that's a lot to give up for Max Crosby.
Yep.
I think there's a chance they just got cold feet on this regardless of the Trey Hendrickson thing.
It's
and
possible.
We're like, oh, we realized we actually didn't want to give up 2 first-round picks for this guy. And I do think it's plausible, however unlikely, that there actually was something in the physical that, was a genuine red flag. Just given the timing and the circumstances, it's going to be hard for this to look good for Baltimore. But I do, like I said, if we come out into the season and you get halfway through it, it's like, oh, Max Crosby's just not good anymore, and he doesn't have that explosiveness. That's my big question is, what are we saying then?
Right. Yeah. No, I listen, you're not wrong. And again, I think they made the right decision. That I wouldn't have traded for Max Crosby. I wouldn't have traded 2 first-round picks for Max. I just wouldn't have done it. I think the way they went about it, I didn't like. That's my biggest issue.
Oh, 100%. It's not,
like
that process needs to be completed faster.
Yeah.
There's probably some blame that goes on the Raiders front office for not, I see it's like you could have seen this coming, but also anytime that you're trading a guy who might have a bad physical, I feel like you want to get that done with as soon as possible so you know for certain what you're dealing with.
Right. That's true.
So and the other thing is if you make them, if the Trey Hendrickson thing really was the thing for Baltimore, if you make them do that physical Sunday night or Monday, when you don't know if you're getting Trey Hendrickson, the trade probably goes through in that situation is my guess, unless the physical really is that bad, in which case everyone looks like a more honest partner. So I think the lesson from this is try to get your physicals done as soon as possible, and we try to get from agreeing to terms to finalizing the deal as fast as possible.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Anything else around the league?
We have breaking news.
We do have breaking news. Yes, I saw that.
Arnold Ebiketie, the Falcons pass rusher, just signed in Philly.
Yeah.
I don't like that. He signed for not that much money in Philly. The Patriots could have afforded that, and I absolutely think they should have signed him at that price.
Agreed.
I am skeptical about the way they have handled the edge position because Harold Landry has been clearly a player in decline, and I think he'll be better next year than he was for most of the season because he'll be healthy.
Right.
But even then, we're talking about an edge rusher in his 30s with multiple injuries who is already slowing down. Right. I mean, I think Harold Landry is someone who should go into camp as a cut candidate.
Yeah.
And right now you only have Draymond Jones as someone in there who's like a starting caliber edge. It's going to be awesome. And, you cut Anthony Jennings, which cutting Anthony Jennings. Oh, I think it makes I think this is one of the things you see in the NFL is as coaches put their mark on a roster, you start cutting guys who might be good players but aren't scheme fits, which is what Anthony Jennings is. Cutting him because you want to free up that roster spot and that cap space for someone who is a similarly able player but better fits what you do makes sense. It's just that at this point, they have not added that player.
Right.
And, you don't bring back Kayvon Chason, which at that money, I think is fine if you're okay. Like, if you didn't want to pay him that, that's fine. He goes to Washington. But right now, Harold Landry should be your edge 3 or possibly your edge 4. Draymond Jones is an edge 2.
Right.
Draymond Jones I liked as a complimentary signing to someone else on the line. And right now he looks like the big piece there.
Mm-hmm.
And losing that on the edge, which was already a weakness last year, combined with losing Tonga in the middle, makes me a little bit anxious about what this defensive line is going to look like going into.
Absolutely. And listen, I like Elijah Bonder. I think that we should like Elijah Bonder after what he did last year in the playoffs, but I don't know how you can be comfortable with him being a starter for you or, or a, a real rotational guy for you. And listen, maybe they like a lot of edge in the draft. You're drafting at the end of the round. So like your first round pick is really kind of like a second round pick. And your second round pick is kind of like a third round pick. And your third round pick is kind of like a fourth pick. And it's like you're not drafting at number 4 overall. If you're drafting at 4 overall, I'd say, okay, you're going to draft an edge rusher at number 4, and you're going to get a good one because there are some really good ones at the top. At 31, who knows what you're going to get? And, that concerns me. And so I don't like the way they've handled the edge position at all. I think that, right now, and Bruce, in the chat says that they're a bottom 5 edge rushing room in the league. And I don't think that's even debatable at this point. Like they just don't have guys that can get after the passer. And so they schemed up a lot of stuff last year. They're able to get after the passer, but like Anthony Jennings was arguably their best, was one of their best edge players in the playoffs. So to not bring him back, I get that he's not a scheme fit. I understand that. He still played well for them last year. Like that's what I don't understand is like, maybe he doesn't fit exactly what they want to do. He played well for them. So if he plays well, who cares if he fits on paper? He's a good guy to have in the locker room, and he plays well for you. What else do you want?
Well, I think the worst case, like Jennings is totally someone you can bring into camp.
Right.
And then cut. Like in my eyes, Braden Swinson and Elijah Ponder and Harold Landry and Anthony Jennings should all be battling for like 2 spots.
Right.
That's probably that should go. And I will say, like, you look at, like, clearly it seems like they're making room for young guys. Like, I look at Joshua Farmer and Braden Swinson. Like, they drafted guys at these positions last year.
Right.
And Farmer, doesn't finish the season healthy. Swinson doesn't make the team. He stays in the practice squad and then comes back to the roster later, but doesn't really do anything. I liked the draft picks. I thought they were steals given where they were. That doesn't mean that they're going to be good players. It just means that they were better than the typical prospect you think you'd get at that spot. And this is year 2. Like, this is where we're going to go with this. If you can't get guys like that playing really well, or Harold Landry somehow coming all the way back from that injury, like, it's tough. And I will say, I think they're strong enough on the back end right now in the secondary that you can design a lot of blitzes and still be okay. But I am worried that we're putting ourselves in a spot where you have to go edge with your first pick. Because you, like we talked about, you don't want to be in a position where you're forced to take a position.
Right.
Especially at the top of the draft, because you need a starter. And Arnold Ebiketie, you can afford that contract. And he's at least a guy who can be in the top 3 of your rotation off the edge.
Right. Right.
He's good enough that you don't have to take an edge with the first pick.
Yeah. Yeah, it's frustrating, but here we are, unfortunately. So
I don't get it. And I think I had read that there were some criticisms of the way Mike Vrabel handles his edge rushers in Tennessee, that he didn't necessarily have the most depth there. I have to look more into that see if that's true or not. But
yeah, it's
if that's a pattern, I don't necessarily love that.
Yeah. Considering it's such an important position to have. And they were able to get after.
We can go get Rob Ninkovich and Chandler Jones and have them each play 90% of the snaps again.
They were able to get after the passer in the playoffs. And Jason was a big part of that, but they were able to get after the passer. And so I think the scheme is good enough to work. It's just like, why are you putting yourself in a difficult spot? Just get a good player, Yeah.
And this is the type of position, like when you're not signing or when you're cutting Stephon Diggs, like that's what effectively we think they probably saved, between $6 and $10 million against the cap this year between that move and the Doubs signing.
Yeah,
probably. Well, they didn't recoup the full 26.5 from the Diggs thing, but still, money that you gain from that, you like to put towards the receiver and something else. The and something else being an auxiliary pass rusher like Arnold Ebiketie is something that fits. And I will say, like, Jadeveon Clowney is still out there, and they can sign him, and that would work, and he might not sign until camp. So you might still be able to, have that plan and be fine. But Draymond Jones is not a young player, and Harold Landry and Jadeveon Clowney are old. Is that really what you want your pass rush to be?
Yeah. I just, I don't love it, but here we are. So, we'll see. All right. You want to get into my mock draft from Pat's Pulpit on Monday?
Yeah, we might have to get through this quick because we're already at the hour mark. But
very quick. Yes. Let's do it. I'm just going to fly through some of this. At 31, I have Emmanuel McNeil Warren, the safety from Toledo. Listen, I know they picked up Byard. They need a safety still. This is he's cut out of the same cloth as in Nick Manwari. He's not that player, but he's that type of player. And I think that, I like that quite a bit. So,
yeah. And I mentioned before that, there's a chance they play more dime this year. If they were going to play more dime, that would be your way to do it.
Yep. In the second round, I have Malachi Lawrence, who was at 63. We'll see where he ends up getting drafted. But the edge from UCF, 6'4", 253, ran a 4.52 in the 40, 40 inches in the vert, and 10.10 in the broad jump. He's an explosive guy. This is the type of player where I feel like he may not be available at 63, but if you were to do that Cordell Patterson trade down, right, that 29 to 52, or 31, of course, 31 to 52, or you take some picks and move up, right, and draft a guy like this. I like Lawrence quite a bit, and I think he could really help what the Patriots are doing.
I like it.
So I had them trading up in the third round. I had them giving up a sixth this year and a fifth next year to go from 95 to 82. And at 82, I had them taking Antonio Williams from Clemson. He was at 69, but he had dropped a little bit on the board when I was doing the mock draft. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to kind of jump up and get him. I think they need to upgrade Pop. And Antonio Williams is a slot receiver. And I think that fits for what the Patriots want to do. I'm not taking a slot receiver early, but if you tell me I can get one in the third or fourth round, I'm in on that. And I think Antonio Williams is a guy that can do that for them very well. So, fourth round, I took Markel Bell out of Miami. Now he is still at 199 on mock draft database. He measured in at the combine at 6'9", 346. He is an absolute monster.
Damn.
So now, being that big, you have some concerns about movement and getting places you need to go and everything like that. But I like him as a developmental guy. You give him a year to sit behind Morgan Moses, and I like that pick quite a bit. So that's fun. Just give me a huge guy. And then I went linebacker in the other fourth round pick. I went Bryce Boucher from Oregon. I don't know if you know about Bryce Boucher or not, Matt, but interesting career. Went to Oregon to play baseball. Drafted by the Astros in the 13th round in 2024. Walked onto the football team as a D-back and then transitioned to linebacker in 2023. Over the last two seasons, he has 230 tackles, 13.5 TFLs, 3 sacks, and 10 pass breakups. Aggressive run defender, plays on almost every special teams and has decent athleticism to play in coverage as well. So I like him. He just seems like a Vrabel type of guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So fifth round, I went Thad Dixon from UNC. I think it's unlikely that the Patriots take a guy from UNC, but if they do, I think it'll be Thad Dixon. Dixon talked about at the combine how him and Belichick would watch Ty Law film, and that kind of improved where he was. And so I think that he did a nice job at the Senior Bowl. I think that he's a guy that that would fit for the Patriots in what they're looking for.
Agreed.
So. Sixth round guy I already talked about. We've talked about on the show on Mock Draft Mondays. Albert Regis from Texas A&M. Love this guy. I don't have more to say. We already talked about him, but big fan of Albert Regis. My other sixth round pick, I took Jack Stonehouse, punter from Syracuse. He talked about his relationship with Jeremy Springer when Springer was the special teams coordinator at Arizona. He recruited Stonehouse. He obviously ends up going to Syracuse. But, this is a guy, they need a punter. I think he's one of the best punter in the draft. So I think you go out and you get him. And then my 7th round pick, I drafted a guy that I've shared with you before, but Will Kaczmarek out of Ohio State, a true blocking inline tight end. And maybe Julian Hill is a guy that they say, we don't need that anymore. And again, I did this. This came out Monday morning before free agency started, so they hadn't picked up anyone when I did this. I did say I was wrong about literally everyone they were going to pick up, because I did. My buddy Dave had recommended that I do something like, what do you think they're going to do in free agency? So I had said they were going to sign Alec Pierce, they were going to sign David Edwards or Suamalo, they were going to sign Devin Lloyd or Corey Walker or Leo Chanel, one of the linebackers, and they were going to sign an edge. And I mentioned Boye Mafe, Owe, or Sean Gary. I missed on every single guy, but I was right in the fact they did sign a wide receiver, they did sign a left guard, and they did sign an edge. So I was right about the positions.
They signed a linebacker, just a depth linebacker.
That's true, and a linebacker. You're right. So I signed all the positions, just the completely wrong guys that I said, but that's okay. So
I'm still shocked at how much money Owe and Mafe got.
Tons of
the fact that those guys are getting $20-25 million a year, that Jalen Phillips gets 30, and you can have Chase on for 12 or Ebiketie for 7, and you don't do either one of those deals. I just don't get.
That's be honest. And clearly, so what that tells me is that they didn't want Ebiketie or
they
Chase,
didn't want them,
right? Like you could have had those guys, and they didn't. And so that's just a clear. It's not that they don't want to play. It's not that they don't want to play here. It's not that we don't want to pay them that much. It's that we don't want them. So, they have a plan in place. Again, I'm going to trust the plan. I'm skeptical right now, but I'm going to trust the plan because it worked out last time, and I'm last year I should say, and you don't really have a choice other than to trust the plan right now. So
when they got a lot of hands-on time with Chase on, obviously in the building, and like Draymond Jones, they went against twice last year.
Yeah,
and because he played for Tennessee and then again for Baltimore later in the year,
right?
And they got a good scout on him. They played against Ebiketie. They played against the Falcons. They got a good scout on him. And from all these guys, they only decided they wanted Draymond Jones. And I'm going to have to trust their judgment a bit there. But I have some questions.
I agree. No Skips mentions AJ Epinesa. He never really reached his full potential in Buffalo, but he's a guy that I would take a flyer on. Like I think that he could theoretically be a good edge rusher.
I'm not sure if he's the fit for the type of edge that they usually like.
Yeah, you're not wrong. But I just think too, like, find a guy that fits that role and just bring a guy or two in. Even if they're, just veterans, bring a guy or two in if they're veterans. And then you feel like, okay, when I go into the draft, I don't have to draft a guy at 31. I don't have to draft an edge rusher at 31. Right. But we'll see.
Yeah.
Anyways.
All right. Is that it for us?
That's it for us. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Thank you to the chat, as always. And we'll be back with you Monday night. We're going to do a live mock draft Monday night. So we'll do live mock draft Monday, and then we will go from there. So thanks, everyone. We appreciate it. Be good to each other, and go Pats.